Blast me to Calmer's skull! It's time for the Mad Merlins Warhammer 40,000 Imperium Journey. Issue 64, full coverage. Hello everyone and welcome back to the Mad Merlins Warhammer 40,000 Imperium Journey. I'm Merlin and here we go with issue 64, and as you can see we get the Immortals, or should I rather say the Deathmarks. And we got a lovely issue to go through. First of all, before we get into anything, don't forget, of course, to hit that like button, tickle that subscribe as well, and tickle the little bell icon so you get up-to-date coverage of all my mad content. And of course, don't forget, there's my links in the description down below for you to utilise to help support the channel in any way. And finally, before we get into the issue, today's question is, to me, do you have any questions for me? I'm always asking you, but I want to get some feedback from you. So if you've got any questions or even just suggestions, please drop them in the comment section down below and we'll have a good friendly little chat. Right, here we go then with issue 64. So as I mentioned earlier, it's going to be full coverage. We will go through the frame, go through the magazine. I'll introduce you to the two armies I'm going to be using, and then we'll go through the battle report for this issue's playthrough. So, as I mentioned, here is our models. And here's our magazine. So 5 miniatures, and it's a Necron Deathmarks. Building and painting a Deathmarks. We've got brand new rules for the Necrons and the Space Marines, and we also have data sheets for our units. Right, so let's go into the overhead cam, and we'll have a look at the frame, and then inside our magazine. So here we have our frame, and it is, of course, the same as we had for the Necron Immortals some 40 issues ago. So with this frame, we can build 5 models. We've got the choice of either the Deathmark backs or your Necron Immortal backs. Then we got the choice, of course, for our Tesla weapons, our Gauze weapons, and of course the Synaptic Disintegrators for our Deathmarks, which we will be building. Although I won't be building because I've already got a squad of Deathmarks, so they are waiting off to the side, and we'll have a look at those in a minute. But we'll continue looking around the frame. We've got lovely components. It's a fairly old kit, I think 2011, there you go. So yeah, a good 11 years old. But it is one of the better kits from the time. There was a lot of winners and losers of that time. I know I didn't like a lot of the Canoptek stuff that came out at the time, although I'm slowly liking it now. I've actually had the pleasure of using it. But the Deathmarks are definitely one of the better upgraded kits of the time. And luckily they set the bar pretty well, because they followed suit with the Necron Warriors just last year. Or was it 2020? 2020 with Indomitus, yeah. But anyway, here we go. Have a nice close-up look at the heads. So we've got the 5 Deathmark heads there, and then the 5 Immortal heads. Lovely components. Got the extra pipes for the disintegrators, and the spines for the Deathmarks. Then the Immortals, their spine is built into the back of the torso with the gun cables as well. So if you've still got the instructions from issue 25, I believe, you should have everything you need to build up another 5 Deathmarks with Gauze, which I'm going to be doing, as I'm going to be abusing the printing of the magazine. A lot of it says that you can still take up to 10 models for the Immortals, so I'm going to take another 5 even, of the Immortals and fill the unit as 10 next time we get a nice big battle. There we have it. That's the frame. We also get 5 32mm bases, but they are hidden away with all my other Imperium stuff. So, deep breath, and let's dive into issue 64. Okay, here we go with our magazine. So our full contents is the Deathmarks. We got 2 bits of information. We got Captain Artemis and Auton Cassius. We got details about the First Tyrannic War, building and painting our Deathmarks, deployment rules for the Space Marines, rules of the Necron tier, data sheet for our Deathmarks, and mission of Rallying Cry. So Necron Deathmarks are the Necron sniper assassins. Deathmarks are employed by Necron overlords to assassinate their enemies, be they obstinate human generals or debased orc warlords. They infiltrate the battlefield using dimensional translation technology, picking off their assigned targets before their presence is known. So the Deathmarks are equipped with synaptic disintegrators, powerful sniper weaponry. They are patient hunters. They will take their time to zone in on the prey and then hit when they are most weakest. And they have enhanced ocular visions, so they have the reinforced plate, which focuses their 2 eyes into a single eye, giving them a rather menacing cycloptic look. And of course, on the background, we can fill out their designation. So they are the Scything Annihilators, very fitting. They of course belong to Cormac the Stormbringer, my overlord. And they are part of the first cohort, and they are Unit 1 of that cohort, so they are probably the most elite units of that particular cohort. Their battle damage, though, is servo motors have degraded, so they're not as mobile as they used to be, so they do rely on their translocation technology a lot. But they have been gifted with some dispersion fields, which, if I remember rightly, gives them a 5-up in Von. Well, official rules anyway, but it's just giving them a little bit of extra fluff. We've got a little tick chart here of assassinations, so write down the character you destroyed, and whether you destroyed them or not. Moving on, we've got some background information on, by far, one of my favourite Space Marine characters, which is Captain Artemis of the Deathwatch. So, born to the feral cannibalistic tribes of Postal, chapter planet of the Mortifactors, Artemis is a decorated officer of the Deathwatch. His life has encompassed bloodshed since his earliest days. Though the rage and fury of his youth has been tempered by experience, Artemis still fights with a ruthless intensity. So, Postal is a pretty backway planet. They live in nomad tribes, but they are also the home to the Mortifactors, who take great joy in flensing the skulls of defeated enemies and displaying it in their chapter monastery. Artemis was discovered on top of a pile of dead bodies that he killed as they tried to kill him. He was then taken in by the Mortifactors, but he quickly displayed a knack for destroying the Xenos, which caught the eye of the Deathwatch. The Mortifactors used Artemis as their tie to the Deathwatch, and he spent more time with the Deathwatch than he has with the Mortifactors. He has been essential in defeating the Enslaver Plague of Taran Horst with cyclonic warheads, which promoted him to Watch Captain of Talazar Prime. His dire nemesis is Eldrad Ulfwan of Ulfwe. He stopped Eldrad, who originally tried to bring about the birth of Yniad. While Eldrad failed, Yvraine ultimately passed the test and brought him around. So he's armed with the Combi Bolter, Hellfire Extremis, and he has a Power Sword as well. One of my favourite characters from back in the day. He used to be the only Space Marine character in the Inquisitor 28, I think it's 28 mil role-playing game. They had big metal models. I remember he actually converting a classic Space Marine captain into a nice pose to represent that model. But of course he has his own model now and full rules in the Deathwatch Codex. Moving on, we got a bit of information about Auton Cassius. You might think it's a bit odd why he's included with a different chapter's character, but we'll get into that shortly. Ultramarines Master of Sanctity. Now the highest ranking chaplain of the Ultramarines chapter, Ortan Cassius spent decades serving in the ranks of the Death Watch. There you go. He is famed for the hatred of Tyranids and has dedicated much of his life to their destruction. So Cassius is one of the oldest living Space Marines in the Ultramarine chapter. By no far the oldest living Space Marine. Well, there isn't a Dreadnought. He has outlived some of the Dreadnoughts. He remembers when they were still fighting as flesh and blood people. While serving in the Death Watch in his youth, he uncovered a Genestealer cult on Gozar Quintus. He destroyed the cult's patriarch, and with his kill team eliminated the remainder of the uprising cult. He is actually, though his current model is the old metal model, now Finecast, you do have a model of him in his youth for Death Watch, where you can actually get the contents of the Death Watch kill team, Death Watch Overkill, which is a nice board game that came out a few years ago. A really good game. It first introduced the Genestealer cults and gave us a awesome new Death Watch kill team in the form of Cassius and his particular kill team. Where was I? Upon returning to his chapter, he had the unfortunate event of becoming integral in the First Tyrannic War. He, along with the first company of the Ultramarines, when the first company of the Ultramarines was defeated at the First Battle of Macragge, he led a failed attempt to rescue him. He then spent long years afterwards recovering from a Carnifex attack and raising a new type of veteran, the Tyrannical Veterans, which are exclusive to the Ultramarine chapters. So that leads us into the First Tyrannic War. Behemoth was the first Tyranid Hive fleet to be identified by the Imperium of Man. After destroying the outpost on Tyran Prime, the fleet swept on through settled space, carving a path towards the Ultramarines' empire of Ultramar. The fleet appeared almost unstoppable. So, the beast from the east, as most people, well, as Tyranids can be known as, first discovered thanks to the efforts of Inquisitor Cripman. He uncovered the first Tyranid beast on Tyran, which is where they got the name from. Though valiantly they tried to stop it, they had to retreat, and through that retreat the Tyranids followed them into Macragge, where the first company, as we discovered, was brutally slaughtered to a man, but ultimately, thanks to the efforts of Calgar and Cassius, they managed to defeat back the Tyranid threat. So, here we are, Battle for Macragge, the old 4th edition Codex cover. Calgar with his Fists of Ultramar and his Honor Guards as they battle the very deadly Tyranids. So, while we ultimately won, it did come at a great sacrifice. Moving on then, we got our building instructions. So we build torsos, all the same pretty much. So 5 different fronts, only 1 back and only 1 spine, so you can't go too wrong there. We do have a couple of guns that have specific arms that match up to them, so make sure you pay attention when doing that. And don't forget to attach the energy cable that, like I did the first time I built Deathmarks a long time ago. We then have, of course, our 5 different legs, and then finally our head. So they're very simple, but still it will be a test to try and get the arms to glue and stay in position. Make sure you hold them in place and let the glue fully dry, as otherwise you might end up with a bit of gap. How to paint our Deathmarks. So this is how the magazine wants you to paint them. So we're painting them in the Zarak Dynasty, of course, so 3 coats of Runelord Brass. Picking out our black details with Abaddon Black and metal details with Lead Belcher. Picking out all our white details of Corax white and applying Nuln oil over the metal and some of the white areas. Try to avoid the areas that will be low. We only want to put it around the faceplate. Then putting Cryptek Armor Shade gloss over the metal areas. Then Stormhost Silver to highlight the silver and the brass. Dawnstone to highlight the black. And a Diminished Sharpened Grey for fine highlight. And our bases are Astrogranite, Nuln oil, and a dry brush of Dawnstone. So very simple, very quick. It shouldn't take you long to get these guys painted up nicely for your battle. Speaking of battles, we're moving into our rules section for this issue. So we have our Space Marine deployment abilities. So there are many ways the Space Marines can deploy. So this gives us the 3 main ways, which is combat squads, which I will get into in a bit. Death from above, which allows you to put units in Sky Strike. And also concealed positions, which will come in handy for when we get more of our Vanguard stuff soon. So then we have tutorials on the back here for concealed positions, as well as the combat squads. Finally, we have rules for the Necron tier, so 3 key rules for the Necrons. So this includes dimensional translocation and living metal, plus a 3rd rule for the Royal Court, just affects how you build your army. So when mustering your army, if your army contains an overlord, that must be your warlord. If not, you select your warlord as normal. So dimensional translocation allows us to set up off the battlefield and then deploy anywhere on the battlefield 9 inches away from the enemy. And living metal allows us to regain wounds, once 1 wound for each of our command phases. So it's nice that we finally got these rules down in written form. We haven't had them since our early days of the magazine with our tutorial missions. And then we got a couple of tutorials on the back there, so explaining the Royal Courts and then explaining dimensional translocation. Finally, we got a data sheet for our Deathmarks. So they are 5-man unit, movement 5, weapon skill 3, ballistic skill 2, strength 4, toughness 5, wounds 1, attacks 1, leadership 10, and a 3+ save. Not that durable with only 1 wound each, but hopefully eventually they might get an update and get a bit more tougher. They do have the added toughness of being toughness 5 though. So even though it only says 5 there, if this model unit contains 6 or more models, it has a power rating of 8 instead of 4, and every model is equipped with a Synaptic Disintegrator, which is a 36-inch range gun, heavy 1, strength 5, -2, 1 damage. And each time you select targets, you can ignore lookout serve rules, and also each time you make an attack, unmodified 6s score a mortal wound in addition. So reanimation protocols, command protocols, and dimensional translocation as usual. And then we got our normal keywords there. Then we got a tutorial on the back about the Synaptic Disintegrators and how they can pick out Librarian, even though he would normally get the Lookout Sir. And one of those wounds was a 6, so it is a mortal wound in addition to the normal saving. Phew, I think we're finally through that. So we have a quick look at our mission, do a gallery for my new Deathmarks, and we'll get into the 2 armies I'll be using. So it's a very small mission, only 25 power, using our newest battle mat and printed terrain. We've got 2 deployment zones, 1 in each corner pretty much. Player A, which will be the Space Marine player, deploys here. Player B is a Necron player, deploys there. The only way to win is if the Imperium can rally up, do the rally up action 3 times. Otherwise, the Necrons win. But luckily, we have one of those action objectives right in our home deployment zone. So as long as we can avoid the Necrons getting to us, we can try and do as much of that action as possible. I think what it should have meant to do was you're meant to do the action 1 time at each of those different objectives. But we'll leave it as it is. But yeah. Okay, let's have a look then at the Necron Deathmarks. So here's my Necron Deathmarks painted up in my classic Saltec scheme. So I've gone with the original colour scheme for these Deathmarks, which they did have the black in the same place as much as the magazine shows us. But I've gone with the silver instead of the brass for my Saltec Dynasty colour scheme. As you can see, their synaptic disintegrators look very menacing with that glow paint added, so we should be getting that in the next delivery. So hopefully all your Necrons will start looking a lot more finished. That makes no sense. But regardless, there we have my Deathmarks. They've been based in my colour basing scheme that I'm currently doing for all my models. And they've been given a coat of Storm Shield varnish as well, just to give them some added protection. Right, with that said, let's have a look at our missions armies. So here's my 2 armies for this 25 power battle. So for my Space Marines, we have the Captain and Lieutenant as our characters. So I've got a couple there to try and get the action done. I've gone for a nice squad of aggressors for some defense. And we've got a 10-man squad of assault intercessors, just so I can show you off the tactical squad, combat squad special rule. So, moving on to the Necrons, there's quite a lot for the Necrons as they are a little bit cheaper. So, for my character, I've gone for my favourite Mancer, the good old Chronomancer there. I'm really going to be building up my second one at some point, so I can have 2 of them. I've got a unit of Crypto Thralls for his bodyguard. He's also brought with him a bodyguard of Immortals, 10 Warriors, and of course the Deathmarks. And finally, rounding out the force is a squad of 3 jet bikes. The Chronomancer also has the Photonic Transsubjugator, which allows him to ignore the first wound every turn. So that's pumped him up to 5 power. I then have 6 power for the Necrons, 4 power for the Immortals, so that's 10, 15, 4 for the Deathmarks, 2 for the Crypto Thralls, so that's 6, and finally 4 for the Tomb Blades, giving me my 25. And the Space Marines, most of my power has gone into that 10-man squad there. 10 power, 6 power for the aggressors, 4 for the Lieutenant, giving me the other 10, and finally my 5 power for my Captain. Right, let's set up the battlefield, and we'll get on with the mission, Rallying Cry. So before we deploy, the first thing we need to do is to activate the combat squads rule. So as we have a full 10-man squad of assault intercessors here, what we're going to do is break it down into 2 5-man squads to make them a bit more usable on the battlefield. So what we'll do is we'll put these 5 into one unit and these 5 into another. The rule says we have to split the squad as equally as possible, so in the case of any underpowered squads, make sure you divide it up as best you can. So for a full 10-man squad, we can make 2 units of 5. If we had only like a unit of 8 underpowered, we'd have to put 4 into each unit and then 1 into another. So there we have it. Now we can move on to deployment as usual. So these now count as 2 separate units for the cases of deployment and all of the rules, but only count as a single unit for the purposes of victory points. So if you only destroy one of the 2 squads, you don't get the full victory points. Right, moving on then, let's deploy our armies. Okay, we are deployed, and I've gone for as best I can to sort of split my forces to focus on the objectives. So we've got the aggressors and the captain in the building there on the home objective, the lieutenant and the assault intercessors there, ready to go for the other objective there, and finally our 5-man squad of the sergeant, ready to go for this objective over here. On the Necron side, we've got the warriors in the building, ready to bundle out. The Immortals here, ready to cover this side. Jet bikes over there. Deathmarks in trans-dimensional location, and the Chronomancer and his bodyguard just back there. So we need to start the rally up action at the end of our shooting phase. And then by our next command phase, if we are still in range of that objective, we activate it and complete it. And only characters can do it, so I have to hopefully keep my captain and lieutenant alive as long as possible. So I think a lot of it is going to be trying to delay the Necrons from getting to us, but it couldn't go our way as we are a bit low on the numbers side. Right, here we go for this issue's dramatic reading. A rallying cry. Several key officers have been slain by Necron assassins, causing the Imperial advance to stall. High-ranking commanders have been dispatched to front lines to rally their troops and press the advantage. Operating so close to the front line is fraught with risk, however, for the assassins are still at large, and the opportunity to eliminate key elements in the Imperial command chain will prove tempting indeed. Targets of opportunity. The Necron Overlord's phalanxes have been ordered to strike at high-value targets, preventing Imperial command from rallying their warriors and striking a blow against the humans' morale. With the Dolmen Gate still bringing reinforcements into the war zone, time is firmly upon the side of the Necrons. A question of morale. The armies of the Imperium are comprised of many factions. Some, such as the mighty Ultramarines, are all but immune to fear. Others, however, are not so strong of will, and the advance has stalled. Imperial commanders must reach the front line and use their inspirational skills to rally the broken. Right then. Just need to roll off to see who goes first. Oh dear, it's the Necrons. This will give them a slight advantage to get in range and do some damage early on. So, here we go then with the Necron. Turn 1. So, the Necron turn was pretty quick, but pretty destructive. We've managed to eliminate 2 Space Marines. So, the front 3 warriors here managed to get in range of the Assault Intercessors over there. The back 3 were in range of the Aggressor Sergeant there. They didn't do any damage, but they managed to kill... The front 3 did kill 1. And over here, the Immortals killed off 1 on the Assault Intercessors here. Still, everything is to play for, as is the Space Marines turn 1, and we'll see how well they go with doing their actions. End of the Space Marines turn, and, well, the Warriors took the brunt of the Space Marines' assault. The aggressors started off by flaming down into them after moving up. The Assault Intercessors also took a shot at them, managing to kill 1. Finally, the Lieutenant opened up and then decided to charge them, and they are now down to 5. They luckily passed their morale test on a 1. If it is a 6, they would have failed. But as it is, they are holding firm. Everything else that had morale tests pretty much passed anyway, because they only lost 1. So we can remove all our markers and get ready for turn 2. Captain also, in the end of the shooting phase, started the action. So we are 1 away from winning. End of Necron turn 2, and we've decimated the Space Marines a bit more. So the Tomb Blades have moved up and opened fire on the Assault Intercessors up there, killing 2. Over here, the Immortals shot at these guys. 1 guy managed to tank most of the wounds before dying, and I lost another guy. No, just the 1 guy, sorry. And 1 guy was wounded. I forgot to put the wound down. So yeah, 1 guy is wounded. Both of those squads will need morale, of course, the end phase. The Lieutenant killed 3, but 1 resurrected over here. And the Immortals, of course, shot at this squad. Made use of the stratagem to get extra hits and 6s, which was good because I missed 3 and they got 3 6s. So full 10 shots going at the 4 intercessors. The squad over here did drop command point for transhuman physiology, which did benefit them a little bit because otherwise it'd been freeze to wound. But otherwise it has gone pretty well for the Space Marines all in all. So now moving on to the Space Marines turn 2. and no aura ability from the captain, but the lieutenant's still there to use the rerolls to wound. Okay, end of Space Marine turn 2, and we are making progress. We've cut our way through the Necron Warriors thanks to the Assault Intercessors, who are now moving off towards the Tomb Blades. Lieutenant is falling back in a position. Well, didn't fall back, but what's the word? Consolidated. There we go. Consolidated back towards the building, ready to go inside and try and do another rally up. Captain rallied up here. Aggressors couldn't do much. They weren't in range of anything, sadly. Just short on the Immortals, who are still going to advance towards them anyway. Tomb Blades over there didn't do anything, and neither did the squad facing them, though they did almost get close with a crack grenade in the shooting phase. Right, moving on then, it's time for Necrons. Turn 3. Okay, and the Necron's turn, it was a pretty quick one. The Immortals advanced, shot at the aggressors, getting a single hit, single wound. Actually no, wasn't a single hit. Quite a few hits, but only a single wound, and he managed to save. And the Tomb Blades managed to actually wound one of the Assault Intercessors, but they managed to wound him back. Right, on to the Space Marines' turn, and it's time for the Ultramarines to show their worth. And the Space Marine turn 3, and it is down now to whether the Immortals can try and kill off that captain, but I doubt they can. Fight phase went well. We killed a single Tomb Blade with the combined effort of the Lieutenant, who didn't get any wounds, sadly. The Assault Intercessors managed to get quite a few wounds, but they managed to tank a lot of the damage. But they are one fewer at least. So next turn, the trans-dimensional location is going to have to happen, but it's going to be kind of impossible to put them, because I'm not going to get in an area where I can easily target the captain, sadly. Sadly, so I won't be able to try out my Deathmarks. But anyway, here we go then with Necron turn. If I can find it, 4. End of Necron shooting phase, and it's just, no, it's going to be an Imperial victory. I moved the Immortals into the building, give them a bit of extra protection, and shoot at the aggressors, which managed to get my Deathmarks in here, which all of them could see. Scored only 2 hits, and out of those only 1 wound, which luckily was a mortal wound, but the captain shrugged off the regular damage, leaving him still alive on 4 out of his 5 wounds. Nope, 5 out of 6 wounds. And he will complete the action in his next command phase, so it's not going to happen for the Necrons. It's an Imperial victory regardless, so I really think that mission could have benefited with the rule stating the action had to be done at each of the different objective markers. That would have put a little bit more pressure on the Imperium, and they'd had to have been a bit more aggressive and branch out into each of those areas. Where it was, it said you had to just do it 3 times on any of the objective markers. And yeah, the captain was able to bunker down in the ruins there and just do it turn after turn. Yes, you lose his aura ability, but with the aggressors up there not needing to hit, he really wasn't benefiting much. But yeah, like I said, it relied heavily on that Necron shooting phase getting maximum benefit out of these guys. But sadly, due to them counting as moved, it was hitting on 3s instead of 2s. Even with a command reroll, I still only got 2 wounds. And I only did 2 hits even, and I only did get that 1 wound, which was a mortal wound, in addition. So yeah, I'm ending it there as an Imperial victory, which means it's time to look at our next Imperium. So issue 65 brings us the Vanguard Elite. So this is the Lieutenant, the 2 Sergeants for our 3-man squads of Suppressor and Eliminator, and our Sergeant, Helix Adept, and 2 other guys for our Interceptor squad. No, Interceptor squad. Infiltrator squad, that's the one. So many squads beginning with I. But we get 2 new units who will be able to fully field with the previous 3. We'll be able to field a 5-man squad of these guys, and we'll be able to field the lieutenant. So we're going to have some nice Phobos action in that next battle. And then in issue 66, we get the final frame of our infiltrating Marines. So we get our suppressor, our eliminator, other way around, and our last 3 infiltrators. So we got some really good stuff coming. So building and painting the extra details on the Phobos guys. We get new data sheets. And I believe we do get some new rules in that issue. Can't see my issue from here. And it's kind of blocked off there. We also get in 66, we get the 5D models, the build and paint guides, which is a lie. There's no paint guides because you have to refer back to issue 63. But we do get data sheets in there for some of the squads we haven't got yet, I believe. And we also get at some point the remaining part of our Angels of Death rules. But there we have it. Thank you all for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, of course, don't forget to give it a like. Drop a comment down below with your questions or feedback. And of course, don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more mad content. I will see you next time. And thank you and goodbye.